I'm gonna do this whole thing all at once so I can just finish the series. I forget the order that I go in with the descriptions though. The sign of Leo is a fire sign. It's a fixed sign. So there's 3 modalities that signs can take. It's either cardinal, mutable, or fixed. When a sign is fixed, it means that it is set in its ways pretty much. It operates in a predictable, solid way. And the elements are pretty much self-explanatory, like water, air, earth, fire. Fire signs are just like, fire signs are associated with heat, with passion, with motivation. So the sign of Leo is originally coming from the 5th house. The 5th house in astrology represents pleasure, sex for pleasure, not, it represents children. It represents children that are not from structured marriages. That's more like the 7th house. It represents children, your relationship with children, your inner child. It represents creativity, recreational activities, things you do for fun. What else? Pride. I learned a while ago that you can kind of like predict the kind of children that you'll have through astrology. The first child that's my car. If the first child that you have is seen through the 5th house, the second one is the 7th house, and the third one is the 9th house. The anatomical rulership of Leo is the heart and the back, the backbone, the spine. The colors associated with Leo is gold. Like I saw some stuff that said that like it's like yellow or orange or something. That's more like the colors of Gemini. The color of Leo is gold. And then moving on to the planetary rulerships. Leo is ruled by the sun. It's the center of the solar system. It's the biggest entity in our solar system. It is, I don't want to say it's the life-giving force of the solar system, because the conditions have to be right to give life. And if you're too close to the sun, you get burned. And if you're too far away from it, you like freeze and you have to start generating your own heat like the planets Saturn and Uranus do. But under the right conditions, the sun is a life-giving force. It generates heat, light. I'm trying to think. I had like an entire list of things that I go down when describing certain signs. Leo is depicted by a lion. I'll talk about them as they come up. So with Leo being ruled by a lion, or depicted by a lion, you can think of how like lions are depicted in media. The sign of Leo also has a lot to do with like Hollywood, because Neptune is exalted in Leo. So like the planets that are acting on the sign of Leo is that it is at home in the sun. It is exalted by Neptune. It doesn't really like being in Uranus. That sounded so fucking weird. I swear, I need my little outline, or else I'm gonna say some stupid shit. Anyway, It is, you can think of how lions are like depicted, like they're the king of the jungle. It's a sign associated with pride, with power, with royalty. Leo is a sign that rules over royalty, like kings and queens and monarchs and stuff. It's about, so the 11th house is opposite of the 5th house, and Leo comes from the 5th house. The 11th house is society at large. It's like the common man. It's large groups of people coming together for the sake of social movements, for social justice, for changing society at large. The 5th house is like the royal class. It's you and your pride, like a lion's pride, like their clan. It's you and people that you personally love. So the 11th house is about receiving love. The 5th house is about giving love. And it ties in with how Leo rules over the heart. Leos actually have huge hearts. Even though like you read some negative stuff about Leos, it's that they're prideful and narcissistic and selfish. I feel like, stay in your fucking lane. I feel like with Leo being a very selfish sign, sometimes seen as a narcissistic sign, it's not always a bad thing. Like, you can't give to other people unless you can't love other people on a level that's deeper than you love yourself. So in a lot of ways, Leo is one of the most loving signs. But keep in mind that this is also depicted by a lion. It's depicted by a predator. This is also a very protective sign. Leos are very protective over their clan, their pride. It's a hunting sign. It's not afraid to attack. And I'm going to describe how like Leos can actually flip from the polarity of fear and bravery. So like on their more noble manifestation, Leos are very brave. They're very loyal because it's a fixed sign. Leos are actually very intelligent too. Leos are intuitive. Leos have like a different kind of intuition. I swear my fucking car just keeps... Never mind. Leos have a different intuition than like Cancer has. Leos have like more of an ability. Cancers can like feel you because it's ruled by the moon, where there's an absence of light, of like sunlight. So you're relying on moonlight and intuition and other senses that are compensating for the lack of light, the lack of visibility. Leos have a talent for being able to see people. Leos, just like they intensely seek validation. Like sometimes you hear stuff like says that Leo's like an attention whore, and it's true. Just like they intensely seek validation, they also give validation as well. Leos know how to share the spotlight with people. Again, I feel like this ties in with how they know what it's like to intensely need attention. So they can then give that same attention to people on the level that they know that they personally need it, because they know what it's like to need it. I feel like this is why the 5th house is associated with giving love. Giving attention, shining light on things. Leo squares the sign of Scorpio, which is about keeping things hidden, keeping things secret. Leo is a sign that shines light. If I didn't just say that. It shines light on things. It validates them. And for this reason, Leos get a reputation sometimes for being very annoying. There's a lot of stuff that people do not want light shined on, or they don't want seen. So a Leo comes around and it's in their nature to just be that beacon of light. And sometimes I think of how Leos attract a lot of parasites, actually, I noticed. They attract people. People are scared of Leos. I think of how, like, a lion's mane, usually, if you're looking at a lion on, like, the Animal Planet or something, lions in the wild, they have a lot of fleas and like, flies and shit always surrounding them. Leo's a sign that attracts parasites. Leo is a sign that... I need to get my car checked out. Leo's a sign that attracts parasites. Leos attract a lot of haters as well. I don't know if I mentioned this, like, in full detail. Leo is a sign from birth. They are thrust in the spotlight. There's always this feeling of a spotlight being on them, and they get used to this. So as they grow up, if they feel that absence of a spotlight, they feel even more exposed than they would if they were, like, in the limelight and, like, all eyes were on them. So, like I was saying, Leos attract a lot of people who adore them. And they also attract a lot of people who hate them. People who act like parasites in their life. I think of how, like, I feel like the house that Leo rules in your chart is where you attract a lot of attention. Where you are generating a lot of energy, and therefore it draws people to you for all kinds of different reasons. I have Leo in my 11th house, my 10th and 11th house. And I noticed, especially when I started posting content, not really on YouTube. I got attacked by a ton of people on YouTube very early on. That's why my comments are turned off on my earlier videos. But so, like, the 11th house ruling over the internet and receiving love, receiving energy. I've experienced both people who love my stuff online and they fucking hate me. And I've gotten attacked pretty badly on websites like Twitter, which is why I ultimately stopped using it. I don't really get attacked on YouTube very much anymore. But yeah, that's just an example of kind of stuff that will happen in the house that you have Leo in. I feel like Leo is a sign of the soul, because if you think about how the sun rules over Leo, the sun in somebody's chart is like their essence, their what's visible about them, what they're known and felt for. You feel somebody's solar energy. Like, if you think about how if you go out and lay in the sun, you won't only just be blinded by it, and I'm going to get into this in a minute, how Neptune exalts in Leo and how it's associated with blindness. If you go out and lay in the sun, you are going to see it, usually only if you look in the periphery, though. Don't look directly into it. But you'll also feel it on you. You'll feel it radiating onto you. I feel like Leo is a very soulful sign. It's a sign that follows its heart. Like, you have some signs like, say, Aquarius, which wants to follow the mind. You have signs like Scorpio, which wants to follow its genitals. You have signs like Taurus or Capricorn that wants to follow the money. Leo wants to follow its heart. It wants to follow its passion. So with that being said, Leos are very creative. A lot of Leos are into art. I met some Leos who are into theater. They love things that are bright. They love grandiose things. They usually do love things like movies and Hollywood and fame. Leo's a sign that's associated with fame. I didn't mention that. They love music. They love all forms of creative expression, because this is a fire sign. It's about expression. It's about generating energy, movement, passion, stuff like that. So now I'm going to be talking about how Neptune exalts in Leo. Neptune is the higher octave of Venus, meaning that when Venus, the planet of love and beauty and things that you appreciate and all that stuff, when it has reached its cap in Venus, that kind of energy, it will then be risen up to Neptune, which will then give love and appreciation and beauty an entire new mode of expression. So Neptune is a planet that takes love and turns it into worship. It takes beauty and turns it into, like, it becomes like ethereal. It takes stuff like personal love, like, say, the love you have for a partner, one person, and it like expands it into universal love. Because keep in mind that Neptune is at home in Pisces, which is the last sign of the zodiac. It's where we quit caring about physical form. You quit caring about anything earthly or mundane, and you just love everything. You love everyone for their soul. It's not a superficial sign at all. So I was talking about how Neptune blinds Leo. When a planet is exalted, it is like it's on a sugar high. It's like it is, I guess in the case of Leo, you could think of it how in like The Lion King, the older lion holds up Simba and like shows him off to the entire community, like he's exalting him, like yeah. So when Neptune is in Leo, or really just all Leos have this energy about them, no matter what Neptune is, well, no matter what sign Neptune is in. There's Leo is a sign that is in the spotlight all the time. They live like they're always in a spotlight. This is why they're so dramatic. Neptune's influence on them makes them feel like their life is a movie. Like Neptune has this very dreamy quality to it. Neptune fully embraces the kind of dramatic, character-like, very animated nature of Leo. It fully embraces it. It gives it room to be as huge and as bright and fantastical as it really is. There's a very like dreamy side to Leo. Like the sun, it's at home in the sun. The sun is who you are. It's like your soul essence. It's like you, everything that's visible about you. And then with Neptune, it's everything that you imagine that you can be, everything that you would like to be. Like, you know how like you watch a movie sometimes and sometimes you imagine that you're the character in the movie? That's kind of what it's like. Neptune is like I've said that. I'm just like, I've already described what I'm trying to say. You can imagine that, like, with the brightness of the sun and how it's influencing Leo, when it comes to Neptune, it's like with it being exalted there, when I say Neptune blinds Leo, so you can be whatever you want when it comes to Neptune. You can believe anything you want. You're not confined just based on what is visible about you. Your imagination can get as huge as it wants. So the spotlight that is naturally on Leo, Neptune like amps it up, like turns it way brighter, to the point that Leos can sometimes actually experience situations where, even though they're the sign that rules over the sun, that rules over identity, it rules over who you are, they can lose sight of who they are due to Neptune's influence on them. So you see some Leos who are actually very delusional. Leos can have an inflated ego, and Leos can become very narcissistic. But keep this in mind: when you have a narcissistic streak and you have an inflated ego, it's because you are overcompensating for a very small, hurt child within you. And Leo comes from the 5th house, which rules over children, your child self. Leos often have a wounded inner child. They have a wounded sense of like childhood. They feel like childhood was taken from them too soon. They feel like they can often feel like they weren't validated for all that they are in childhood. They feel like their imagination and their creativity and their fantasy version of themselves wasn't validated. So Leos can actually spend a lot of their adult lives in fantasy, in these like character-like personas that they develop, because it's kind of like a way to avenge their inner child. Like, they felt like as a child they weren't validated to the full extent, so they kind of compensate for this by becoming very selfish, becoming very focused on their personal projects, their own recreational activities. They won't really want to be in situations where they're doing like dry, mundane, hard work, because they feel like their self-expression kind of got squashed when they were a child. So they want to spend their adult lives kind of like avenging it, like they're a hero, like they're trying to be a hero for themselves. Again, this ties in with how Neptune exalts in Leo, and how it's about like your fantasy self. And like in movies and stuff, there's like heroes and villains and all kinds of shit. Leos can be very immature. They can refuse to see the reality of things. They can refuse to see the reality of their partners as well. And I feel like all of it ties in together. I feel like since Leo is a sign that kind of like creates characters that people play in their life. So like I watched something earlier. It said that when you have trauma, you turn yourself into a character as a way to control your reality. It's unrelated. I don't think he knows anything about astrology, the guy who I was watching the video from. But I think I tie this into everything I've just said about Leos and how it's true. Leos tend to create characters for themselves that they then act out like they're actors, and they create characters for people in their lives as well, like their friends, their mother, their romantic partners, because this is a sign that rules over romance. And Leos experience disillusionment a lot because the characters that they've created for people in their lives, how they expect that these people will act, how they expect that people will follow this like movie-like script with them and like just be part of their dance, the way that they think things should be. Because remember that they spend their time being exalted by Neptune, which will let them get away with this like fantastical version of people. They like create people in their heads. Leos they can feel very disillusioned by relationships. They can feel very lonely within relationships, because they've put a character on you. So you can't fulfill it because it's not who you actually are in reality. So sometimes people, when they hang out with Leos, I think of my ex-friends who I had to do this with for a while before I had to ghost. I would hang out with them and I would feel like we were like, things were sequenced, like we were in a play or something. Like I had to take on a certain character with them. I had to exaggerate my own emotional responses. I had to like act like I felt like I had to be way louder than I really am. And I had to give them a lot of space to act very childish, very even like cartoon-like at times. And in a way, I think of also how like I had the most fun with those friends. And it's like a strange form of love. When you let somebody be delusional and you let somebody kind of like live in their fantasy, it's a form of love because you understand the traumatized inner child underneath them and why they act like that. Yeah. But after a while, it gets kind of draining for me. So I've had to cut ties with those friends. I think about also, Leo rules over casual romantic relationships. It rules over relationships that are mainly about like sex or sex for fun. It rules over more like childlike relationships, kind of like puppy love. Not really the deep side of relationships, where you're like thinking like, oh my God, like I just merged souls with this person, or like, this person's gonna die one day. One of us is gonna die before the other. Like the very like painful, more like Scorpio side of relationships. No, like the fifth house is like the more lighthearted aspect of it. And if some kind of like painful issue comes up in relationships that are mainly within the fifth house, it's going to be dramatized and like romanticized. So like if you have an awakening that like I don't know, say like you're in a fifth house relationship and your partner cheats on you, it's not going to be, Leo can't process things on that deep kind of level and just leave it at that. They have to like make it some kind of grandiose, like extreme betrayal. They have to like make a fucking musical out of it. They have to like say, you broke my heart. My heart's bleeding out of my chest. I can't go on. They have to like do all of that shit. Because Leo's a sign that does not deal with the dark side of life very well. It doesn't deal with the dark side of relationships very well. Leo's and the fifth house is like where you will meet the love of your life, but you're not prepared for the reality of relationships. So therefore, whenever the reality of relationships comes up, you will you'll turn it into a soap opera. I feel like this is also the fifth house where Leo comes from is rules over children. I've never met a Leo who has children who planned them, or like who did it for any reason other than love and passion. Like I know one Leo, she had 4 kids. She can't afford them. She had 4 kids over the span of like 6 years, and it's like an entire giant mess. But she did it because she was in the heat of the moment, because there was passion in the relationship, because he was cheating on her, and she like turned it into this big giant movie in her head, and she like became a movie star in her head, and like was in that, the drama of it all. So I feel like children that come from 5th house relationships and from Leos are children that are born out of passion. Yeah. I'm trying to think if I left anything out. Hold on, I'm trying to find a way to put this into words. No, I'm not doing this. I said back towards the beginning of this video that Leo's represented by a lion, and you can think of how like lions are seen as these very regal. They're seen as noble, powerful, intimidating, like these big, beautiful creatures. But you can also think of how, like in The Wizard of Oz, the lion is depicted as a cowardly lion, like a lion who can't do shit. Like he's always scared and he's running away with his tail in between his legs. He's kind of pathetic. This is kind of like 2 ways that Leos can manifest. And I feel like it's because how Leo deals with pride, but it also deals with the opposite of pride, which is shame. It deals with love and the opposite of love, which is fear. The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is more like fear or indifference. So Leos who are who don't get the attention that they need, they don't get the love that they need, they can't really give it in return, and then they kind of just give off this image of being like somebody who's like a downer, somebody who like is always down on themselves, somebody who always feels like they're weak and shameful. Leos can actually, with how Neptune is exalted in Leo, and it kind of makes Leos create characters in their minds that they try to live out. Leos can go from seeing themselves as like the hero or the protagonist. I think that's the word. The protagonist in their own life story. They can go, depending on their level of self-love that they have for themselves or the way that the world has treated them, they can go from being this person who's just like bright and just bursts out and is lovable and incredible, and you respect them and you're in awe of them, they can become people who are very shy and withdrawn, and they don't believe in themselves. They don't feel their own power and their own presence, so they can be kind of careless. Leos, with this being a sign that rules over the heart, Leos who are not self-aware and they're not aware of the kind of huge presence that they give off, how their fire, their this like massive energy that Leos have, they can give off, they can like use this solar energy to hurt others, to burn others alive, to wound others in their heart, because everything that Leos do comes from the heart, whether it is loving somebody and lighting up their life. Leos can also like stab you right in your heart. Or when Leos are getting revenge on you, remember this is a predator sign. They can stalk and hunt you like your prey, and they'll go right for your heart. When Leos are involved in like these big dramatic relationships and stuff, they usually don't let things go. They usually don't like accept that disappointment happens or failure happens. Or that things don't work out. Leos can hold grudges. This is a fixed sign. They can hold grudges, and when they seek revenge, they do it in a very immature way. They can't just let things go. And they can be obsessed with attention. A lot of times they may do things to you just to get a reaction out of you, just to get attention from you. Whether it's positive or negative attention, at some point it won't really matter anymore. Yeah. There was something else I was going to say, but I forgot. Leo is the 5th sign of the zodiac, and Virgo is the 6th sign of the zodiac. The 5th house and Leo ruling over recreational activities, things like parties, plays, things that are done for fun. They can get very messy. They can get very chaotic, very damaging. And then you have the 6th sign Virgo, which is kind of like the cleanup crew that comes in and like fixes things and cleans up the mess that Leo made. With it being a sign of creativity, it's in Leo's case, it's usually they can be very messy. They can not care about whoever's coming after them. They don't care about who comes after them. They don't care about like the small people of the world. So in a lot of ways, I think I met 2 Leos in particular who even if they don't want you long term, because remember the 5th house is like casual relationships. The 5th house, it rules over like your high school years as well, like secondary education. Even if they don't really want you long term, they want to leave their mark on you. They want to leave a mark on your heart. So in a lot of ways, Leos can have very messy relationships. They can even like make it a point to make sure you'll never forget them. So they will want to inflict damage on you, or just do something that makes sure that you can't forget them, so that they can like You get the idea. Yeah, I'm done talking.